Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Warmly Yours webinar. Today is about Ask Us Anything, Radiant Heating Revealed.
Almost anything.
Almost anything. I'm your host, Julia. I'm the owner at Warmly Yours and Chief Bottle Washer. And beside me,
I'm Scott, Assistant Bottle Washer, present and accounted for.
And Scott's also in charge of everything technical. So we absolutely have our expert here. As you can see by that photo, he can take all of your questions. I'm going to chime in too, but today is all about you. We did get some questions in advance, so we're probably going to start with those. But as we progress, we'd love it if you guys out there could engage, ask your own questions. You can see the box right there, your Q&A on that left side of the screen. Ask us anything, folks. But let's get started with some of the questions that were sent in. A lot of people actually register and then they like to actually get the recording later.
And those are great too, because that gives us a chance to get the answers that they're specifically looking for. So every seminar that we have from now on, we encourage you to send your questions in advance.
And we will make sure they all get answered. Interestingly enough, a lot of the questions centered around three major themes, and it had to do with some things that are fairly technical. And I hate to start off with the hardcore stuff. I know, boring. You all can check out right now. But today we're going to start with talking about how to size your circuit, how to determine how many watts a floor heating project is going to require. We'll talk about watt density, because there are different densities that you can use based on your application. And the $1 million question, it's not going to cost you $1 million to operate, so we're going to talk about operating costs.
Yeah, the number one question we get is, how big of a space can I actually heat? Well, that depends mostly on the thermostat. And the thermostat is the thing that's going to be controlling your floor. So the thermostat can switch 15 amps. It's very important to keep that in mind. One very common wives' tale or old wives' tale is that 240 volt electricity is more efficient than 120. It is not. There are very, very few applications in this world where 240 is more efficient. It has to do with electric motors and that sort of stuff. It has nothing to do with floor heat. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get as much or as little heat in that space that you have using the correct voltage and the correct thermostat. So if you're going to be planning to do a large space, you want to try to keep it on one control because it's cheaper to do that. Then obviously you want to go to 240 volts. It lets you double the amount of space that you can cover with 120 volts.
So the control is really limiting how much floor heating you can get on one thermostat, and that's 15 amps.
Right, and then we have other thermostat additions, power modules, which can power an additional 15 amps for each one.
And you can just kind of
daisy chain those together.
Right. So, so small or large, got to keep that 15 amps in mind. And then from there, we can backtrack to, we have different products. They have different flexibility in terms of watt density. Tell me a little about that.
Well, the other most important question we get is, how much power is this going to use? Or how big of an area can I heat? Right. And that you just have to keep in mind that our main product, the TempZone cut and turn easy or flex rolls, they're 15 watts per square foot. So if you're going to be heating a certain amount of a certain amount of area, then what you want to do is you want to take the amount of area that you're going to heat, and you're going to multiply that square footage by 15 watts per square foot. So if you have 10 square feet and you're doing 15 watts, that's 150 watts it's going to take. So it's a very, very simple math that you can do. So it's watts per square foot times the square footage of the room equals the number of watts that you're going to use.
So that formula is golden.
Yep.
That's kind of what you need to look at.
Then you start thinking about what voltage is better. And that's where the 120 and the 240 come in, because obviously for a very small room, you don't need to take a 240 system for that, because the 240 system uses 2 spots in the breaker box. A 120 uses 1 spot in the breaker box. So if you're concerned about the number of slots you have open in your breaker box, you want to try to go to 120, because that's going to let you squeeze that one breaker in and put it on a dedicated line. So let's take a look at the example on the screen. Let's take a look at a 120 volt circuit, because this is what most of our bathrooms are done in, 120, and because of the size. So if you're going 15 watts per square foot times 120 square feet, that's 1800 watts. That's right at 15 amps. So you can switch that with a single thermostat.
And speaking of bathrooms, that would be a fairly large bathroom.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So if you reduce that 15 watts per square foot down to 10, and then you take it times 180 square feet, you're still at 1800 watts. So you can see how playing with the watt density, either 15 or 10 or 8, whatever that watt density you want or you need, you can start playing with that by doing this math, and you find out, hey, I want to stay on one control. What do I need to do here? I can move the coverage a little bit, and I can stay with this one control, and that'll save you some money.
And a lot of times, folks, we have a vast product line. So we have the TempZone Flex Rolls, which are at the 15 watts per square foot. And then we have the cable product. And sometimes you're not sure which one to choose. Think about that watt density. If you need flexibility, 10 watts, 8 watts, you really want to go with the cable. The cable can do any of those watt densities. Whereas the TempZone Roll, it's not flexible. It's 15 watts per square foot. For smaller areas, not a problem, but especially when you're getting to these larger areas at 120 square feet, it starts to make a difference.
Then the other question that people ask is, how much does it cost to run this product every hour?
I get that a lot. Yeah,
And
it's a concern.
every different town has a different rate of what your electricity sells for.
Mm-hmm.
The national average is about 12 cents per hour. Mm-hmm. So if we take an example like we have here on the sheet, 800 watts divided by 1,000, because a kilowatt is how it's measured.
That's
if you see that thing spinning around outdoors, that measures the kilowatts that you use. That's 1,000 watt chunks.
Okay, so you're taking them from watts to kilowatts, divide by 1,000.
Yeah, so you're at 800 watts. Obviously, that's not 1,000. It's less than 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you're at less than 1 kilowatt. So if you take that 0.8 kilowatts times 12 cents, you're right at 9 to 10 cents an hour to operate the product, which is negligible.
Yeah.
So that's how you can kind of figure out ahead of time, hey, what do I need to do in this room? Does it need to be a sole source of heat? Can I just use it to make sure my toes are nice and warm even in the summertime?
Right.
I'm on the second floor. It's above the living room. The living room's always hot. I don't have to worry about my floor, getting really hot because it's already warm to begin with.
Right.
You can use lower watt density there. Save yourself some money on the purchase. Make sure you're staying on one control and less operating costs.
And we get this question so often that we actually created a tool. So you actually can go online, input the operating costs. You can do this for your customer. You can do it for yourself. You can look at the product that you want to purchase, floor heating, snow melting. You can look at the room you want to do, how many square feet you think you're going to cover. You can put in your zip code, or it can just kind of geo-target wherever you are. And it'll come up with a fairly good approximation of what the operating cost of that will be. And I think you can even put in your own rate if you know that.
Yeah, and another common question we get about thermostats is it on, or is it on all the time? So if I want it to be at 80 degrees, is the product always on? No,
Yeah.
it's always on until it gets you up to that 80 degrees.
That's right.
And then it idles at about 60% being on or off.
Right.
It doesn't change the voltage from 120 down to 80, down to 60, down to 40. It
Yes.
doesn't do that. It just turns it on for a little while, shuts it off for a little while, turns it on for a little while. So it does it that way instead of regulating voltage. It regulates the amount of time that it's on full blast or off. That's what it is. On completely or off completely. It's just how you slice up those minutes to make it on, off, to make it idle. So this actually has that figured in. So we know it's going to take a while to get up to the temperature you want. And then we know at that point it's going to idle on and off, which means it's not going to be at 100% all the time.
That's right.
That duty cycle is what that's called, and that's going to range about 60% output instead of 100. So all that stuff is figured out. I went through this yesterday on a live chat with one of our customers, which you can always reach a hold of us when you're on our webpage by just clicking on the live chat icon, and you'll get somebody like us, and we will be glad to answer your question. That was a question I had yesterday.
Yeah, this is a great tool. I highly recommend that you use this. One of the blocks that people have to electric floor heating is how much does that cost to operate? My goodness, electricity, is expensive, but this is truly an energy efficient product.
because it's not on full blast all the time. And the best thing about it, it's not like a furnace where if you know you're not going to be in that room today, you just turn it off. So you're not using any power at all. So it's really, it's a great way to heat a zone.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about energy efficiency. It's really on people's mind. The other question that we got, by the way, thanks. We got 2 bills that sent in those questions on watt density and how to size a circuit. We thank you guys for sending that information in. Did we talk about how to size a circuit enough? Do you think we should get back to that at some point?
I think we're going to be talking about it later, but I think the most important thing is that you need to make sure that your thermostat is 15 amps, and then you start figuring about how much coverage you want in the room. Remember, we don't heat every square inch of that room. So if your room is 100 square feet, we're probably only really heating at about 80% of that, because you don't heat under a toilet, you don't heat under any permanent fixtures. You can't heat over an air vent. So any of that stuff that takes away square footage is going to affect how much electricity goes into that floor. So you tell us 100 square feet, it doesn't necessarily mean we're heating 100 square feet.
Excellent. So the next question that we got from Gary. Gary asked about how do you get that energy efficiency when you're on a slab? We do have an indoor slab heating product. These are used for additions, new construction.
Pouring a new slab, whenever you're pouring new concrete.
Yeah, so you're pouring this new slab. You want to, or you have an existing slab. You want to, and so you have that slab. You want to isolate the slab from the heating element. And there are definitely ways to do that. As a matter of fact, on every quote, we always add our Cerazor product as a recommendation so that people understand that there is a way to isolate it and make it more efficient. So this is the slab heating product, but let's take a look at that Cerazor product. So the Cerazor is the one on the bottom there, bottom right. You can see a photo of it. So let's talk about Cerazor. You brought this product on. Why did you think it was so important?
Well, it isolates the wire from the gigantic heat sink that a slab is. That slab is trying to absorb every bit of heat that it can get before it releases it to your feet. So the idea is try not to heat the slab because it takes a long time. It takes a really good amount of power. What you do is you put the insulation on top of that, and then you put the wire on top of it, and that, just by doing that, your floor will heat up faster. Yeah. You could get anywhere between 4 to 8 degrees higher temperatures because of that, because you're isolating it from the slab and you're just heating the part that you're walking on.
Perfect. Okay. So I hope that helps Gary. The other question that we got, and we get this actually a lot on the phones, is I want radiant heating. I love it. There's a lot of buzz. People really enjoy the comfort and the quality of radiant heating, but their floor is installed. They love their floor, maybe invested a lot of money in that floor. What are the options out there?
To heat the space?
To heat the space with an existing floor.
Yeah.
Cute.
Well, there are other ones, but we're not going to get into it this way. That's why we have radiant panels, because radiant panels are great for people who miss the boat on doing their floor.
That's true.
But if you go and you look under you just put this really nice tile floor in your bathroom, and then you go underneath your bathroom and you look and you go, I've got a bunch of open joists here. What we're doing is we're looking at the underside of the floor with this product. Right. So what you're doing is you're actually putting the heat underneath and having it travel through the floor up to your feet. Well, there's a couple things with this. You need to make sure that all of your bays are available under that room. Mm-hmm. The good thing about doing it when you're installing the flooring is you can cover that whole area to make sure that wherever you step is going to be warm.
Okay, and it's great that you use the word step, because we don't carry this product, but we highly recommend a company Step Warm Floor. They have a great low voltage product that can be installed under the floor joists. This thing is, it's top-notch quality. You can even drive, and I've seen them do this, you can even drive a nail through it, and it's not a safety hazard whatsoever.
Just keep in mind, though, if you have a room that's got 15 joist bays and only 10 of them are available, because you can't put this in spots where there's heating vents already, or plumbing, or anything that crosses into that joist, you may have to leave it empty. So you may have heat, no heat.
So some striping going along.
Right. So that's the one thing you want to look at when you're looking at under floor heating, under joist heating, is what's exactly available from the bottom.
So set your expectation, set the customer's expectation of where they're going to have warm and cold. I always say over communicate that information, and then when it happens, there's no surprises. Right. So that's how you do it. So check out Step Warm Floor. We've included their website there as well. It's a great company. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is we've got some questions about our LED mirror line. And, well, by the way, Thomas asked that joist heating question.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Thomas.
And then for Peter, for our LED mirrors, one of the questions that he asked is, will they be fog-free, steam-free? And we are actually working, currently they are not, but we are working on quite a few changes to the LEDs to kind of upgrade the features that we have. Why don't you talk about some of those upgrades that we're going to be working on?
Well, we're looking to add fog-free activity to that mirror to make sure that it lets you see yourself, obviously, in your steamy room.
Let's show a photo of the mirror defogger. So something like this will actually be placed on the back of the LED mirror, and that particular area would then be steam or fog-free.
Right.
So we'll be looking at adding these to the LED mirrors shipped that way. And we can also do custom sizes of the both the LED mirror and the fog-free mirrors to get exactly the fit that you want.
Yeah, so if you're on our website and you go, I love that mirror, but it's not quite the right size for me, just give us a call or send us an email and say, this is the size I want. And I want it to have a fog-free area that's this size. I want it to look like this. I want it to be the lights around the outside or the lights on the inside.
That's right.
And we can get that made for you, and it would solve all your problems. So if you see something on the website, you go, that looks really cool, but it's too small, don't worry about it. We can make it bigger.
Let's go back to the LED mirror slide. The other thing that we're working on is to make these dimmable. That's been a big request that we've gotten. A lot of questions coming in. They want them dimmable. So that's in the works as well. Anything else coming up that we should know about? I know we're getting new sizes.
Yeah, I mean, just keep an eye on this product because it's evolving for us.
It really is.
It's going to come with different sizes, different light temperatures,
Yes.
Brightness, yellowish or bright whitish. I mean, there's a whole myriad of different things you can add to this to make it customized for your home.
Mirror.
Yes.
All right. And then the next question that we got in was about troubleshooting. Let's talk about what we can do ahead of the game to make sure that we don't get to that troubleshooting first, and then we'll address Kent's question about how do you troubleshoot the floor heating system.
Well, the last thing you want to do is you want to spend money on a product that's going to have to be reset every day or reset every other day, something like that. We call those nuisance GFI trips. Nuisance GFI trips are caused by hair dryers, exhaust fans, that sort of stuff. That's why we suggest usually almost all the time that if you want to make sure that you don't have these type of GFI nuisance tripping issues, is to get it on its own circuit if you can, because that way you're isolating it from the hair dryer. You're isolating it from
the vacuum cleaner.
Right, exactly. Anything with a motor is going to generate noise on your electric line, especially if you have an exhaust fan in your ceiling, because an exhaust fan is, while you're sending it power, it turns. But after you shut the power off, it's like a motor, and it generates a small amount of electricity that kicks back onto the electrical line that's being shared with the floor. What does that do to your thermostat? It can sometimes make your GFI trip.
Okay.
So that's why it's so important to get it on a dedicated line if you can. If you can't get it on a dedicated line, get it onto a line that doesn't share an outlet that's probably going to get plugged into with a hair dryer.
Exactly.
Or something like that that's got a low load on it already.
Right.
And if you take the time to do that, you're going to eliminate a lot of this nuisance stuff.
I remember someone calling in, every time their dishwasher activated or came on, the floor heating, GFCI tripped.
Yeah, because there's a motor in there.
Yeah.
There's a motor in your refrigerators. There's a motor in your chest freezer.
Yeah.
Any place where there's an electric motor, it's going to possibly create some havoc with that line.
Yeah.
But let's say that something does happen. And what you need to do is you need to try to keep that from happening. And that's where you want to go and look at that fantastic yellow and black device there. That yellow and black device, when I was a younger kid, those things used to cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Back in the day.
That's just a digital ohm meter. Back in the day, we were using the analog meters that had the needle that you could never read and you could never make any sense of. So these things now, that unit there is under $15. So everybody that puts in one of these floors should spend $15 and get one of those digital ohm meters, because you're going to need that to test it, to make sure it's good when you get it out of the box, to make sure that nothing happened to it while you were laying it out, and to make sure nothing happened to it if the tile guy took his trowel and happened to make a dent in the wire.
Right.
If you do get a dent in the wire or get a cut in the wire, that's what that little thing on the lower right side is, that circuit check. That circuit check is there to mount onto the wires as you do the cuts and turns, because if you short it or if you cut it, it's going to scream at you and say, stop right there. And that way you can stop with your work and you can go, okay, here's where it probably is, and start looking for it.
So bottom line, do some upfront work, get it on a dedicated circuit, make sure that you use an ohm meter. The circuit check is key. And nothing's 100%. You may still get GFCI tripping. So what I would recommend at that point you do is talk to our team of experts here at Wormley Yours. We have a great troubleshooting tech team.
And here's what we're going to ask you.
Yeah.
What has happened to this floor since you worked on it? Yeah. They came in and they put a doorstop in, or they came in and they put trim in, or the carpet guy came and put a carpet tack down in our transition. All of those things are what happens when the wire gets nicked or cut or damaged. The plumber came in and drilled a hole through the floor for the sink or any of that stuff, cloth feet bathtub. Plumber comes in, drills a spot for the drain, drills 2 spots for the hot and cold water. The first question we're always going to ask you is, do you have your digital ohm meter? Because we're going to do some ohm readings. And has anything like this taken place since the floor was put in? Because if they say, well, you know what, the trim guy was here yesterday and it worked fine before that, that tells you that you have an issue. But let's say that something happens and you can't figure it out. The next thing that I get on the tech line is, am I going to have to replace my entire floor? You're not going to have to replace your entire floor, because the troubleshooting kit that we're going to show you now will allow you to locate the exact spot of where that problem is.
Good.
It's going to allow you to break up that 1 tile or 2 tiles, whatever it takes. You'll find the spot using the thermal camera, and you'll take it, you'll break the tile, you make your repair, and you put tiles down over it.
Take a moment and just take me through all of this tech gear that we have here. What am I seeing, the gray upper left box?
Well, that is your HiPot tester, and what it does, it tests insulation. And if you have wires, if you ever looked inside of an extension cord, you have an outer black cable, then you have a yellow wire and a red wire and a black wire. All those wires have insulation that separate them from each other. Well, what this does is it shoots electricity down those to make sure that the power isn't able to leak through those individual insulations and make a circuit. So what we're doing here is when we're troubleshooting, we're going to be using that. Well, also that red thing in the upper right-hand corner is a Variac, and that Variac lets you, instead of just turning on 120 volts, it lets you turn the switch on and start at 0 and work your way up from 0 to 120, so you can find the sweet spot. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take a look with the thermal camera, which is in the lower right-hand corner, and find out where that hot circuit is and where it stops being hot and goes to cold. So if we take a look here, we've got the digital ohm meter once again in the center, and then we have a device called a short stop, which tells you how far down the cable the problem might be.
And that's in the lower left-hand corner. That's
correct.
The blue device.
Right.
Excellent.
So what you do is everything, whenever there's an issue with the floor, you always are going to need, our first question is going to be, what are the ohms? Right. You're going to need this ohm meter. Once again, it's under $20 at any big box store. So what you're going to do is you're going to take an ohms reading across any 2 of the 3 conductors. If you get an ohm reading across any 2 of those 3 conductors, you have a short. You have a circuit. Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the Variac to activate that circuit, and you're going to look at the camera and go, that's where the circuit ends, and that's where my problem is. If you can't do that, if you have no ohm readings, what you're going to do is you're going to use the HiPot, and you're going to try to short one of those 3 to each other. You're going to try to get 2 of those 3 to short. And if you don't get them to short, what you're doing is you're sending lots of voltage to it, and that one spot where it's trying to make a short is going to heat up also. And what you can do then is you'll find that red spot. That red spot's going to be on the floor, and that's where your problem is.
Okay, and you can use that thermal camera and take it from there. All right, we have a question. I'm not seeing that question on the screen, so if you could read that out to me, that would be great. I'm going to have our lovely assistant do that. She's off camera.
We have a question from Jeremy. He wants to know, can the cable be repaired if it's cut?
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's what this is all about.
This is what this kit is for. So it's cut. So we got to figure out where it's cut. Right, so the thermal camera is going to help us, but we need to activate it. We need to get electricity to it.
And that's what the high pot and the variac are for.
The high pot and the upper left gray and the upper right red. Those two will kind of get it energized. You'll see that hot spot with the thermal camera, and then you're also going to be using the item in the lower left-hand corner that gets attached so that you can kind of understand where the break is as well in terms of length in.
Right. Well, if you can't find it with these first two tools, which is about 95% of the time,
Okay.
let's say that the trim guy came and the trim guy put his nail, instead of going directly to hold the trim into the wall, he angled it down and it went into the wire as it runs along the edge of the room. If that wire is hidden by trim, then you can say, this little thing in the blue on the lower left-hand corner will say, shortstop, your problem is 10 feet down the wire.
All right.
Well, 10 feet down the wire is where it's still under the trim.
Right.
So that's another way of finding
That's
it.
another way of finding it.
We have another question.
All right, let's go, team. What do we have?
We have a question from Anne. She wants to know, what is the procedure if the entire system fails after it is installed?
This is actually the procedure. What we would ask you to do is call in to our 800 number, talk to the tech support team. You can ask for the main man himself, Scott. And from there, what he will do is we love to have an electrician on site to troubleshoot with us. We love to use tools like FaceTime so that we can actually see what's happening on site with the electrician. We walk you through it step by step. We use these tools, and 95% of the time, we know where that break is. We pull up a tile or two. We then have a repair kit where the electrician will repair that wire, and we will then close the job site. So
Yeah, your entire system hasn't failed. It's just one spot on the floor that's failed because it got damaged. So that's the spot that we fix. And once that spot is fixed, then your floor is working again.
All right, what else do we got, folks?
Jeremy would like to also know, is a repaired cable still under warranty?
That's a great question. Obviously, if we are the ones doing the repair, then we're going to cover it. Now, if a tile guy is in doing the work and we find out that the wire has been cut because he was cleaning the grout line, okay, the wire has a beginning that's a factory splice and an end that's a factory splice. Those two parts we're responsible for.
Absolutely.
The person that did the repair on the damaged wire where it was cut is going to be responsible for that part of the wire. So the part that we make and the part that we do, we're going to cover, obviously, but the part that is been damaged and has been repaired by an electrician, that electrician, he's insured, he's bonded, he's going to be responsible for his repair.
Yeah. And most of the time that goes fairly well. I have seen on occasion a few times where we have to go back in and we have to repair it a second time, but it is rare. It does happen though.
Right. And in the old days, a lot of the times the repairs weren't done the way that we say to do them, with the correct tools or with solder or with that sort of stuff. Whenever we get into one of these and we find out that there's black electrical tape around this spot, we know that we haven't been in there. Black electrical tape should not be used for doing repairs on this floor.
Ever. So I think the key point there is these repairs have to be done ideally, in coordination with our tech team. That's the true formula, the true recipe for success. So I cannot emphasize that enough, and that's why you deal with Formula Yours, because we're not a distributor. We have the experts on site. We've been doing this almost 20 years, and we can help to get those floors repaired. What else do we have out there in question land? My little friend that's here offline.
We have people asking about where to find videos on these kinds of repairs.
Oh,
That's
well,
a great
that's a great question.
Let's go to our video slide. All right, so under the Learn area, we do have videos.
Yeah, so
and-
right now you're looking at our homepage there.
Yeah.
And when you put your mouse over the products or the tools or the Learn, if you click on Learn, you're going to get this drop down. And then you're going to see videos. And the videos are right there. And this particular repair that we're talking about is in that video area. So
Yeah.
very easy to find.
Yeah, so yeah, we definitely have documented this. So,
Mhm.
And I think we're working on a snowmelt repair video right now, aren't we?
It's a twin conductor cable, just like the really small thin conductor cable that's in your floor. So we have special instructions already for that. Yeah, so I mean, in theory, it's exactly the same. Snowmelt is like underfloor heating on steroids. It's the same product, only much thicker, because it has to be much more robust
Yes.
to handle people walking over it with boots while it's being installed.
Yeah. Okay, excellent questions. Do we have anything else out there, partners? All right, excellent. One of the questions that we got, let's stick with snowmelt, is do snowmelt cables heat limestone stairs? Are there limitations to how thick, thin the stair coverings can be?
Limestone is used all the time on stairs. So what happens is people will start with the old concrete base or put a new concrete base on. Then they attach the cable to that concrete base, mortar it down, and then lay the stone on top of that and set it. You're limited to 2-inch thickness. So you want to make sure you're not buying a 4-inch slab or a 6-inch slab of limestone, because it will not heat through all that. It needs to be 2 inches. And when you're making a stairway, you want to make sure that you minimize the bull nose or the overhang of each step, because as that overhang protrudes from the stair, you get further and further away from the
heating
cable.
element, right.
And as you get further and further away from the heating cable, it's difficult to get that heat out there.
Yes.
So that's why if you have a really long overhang or a bull nose that's really long, you'll find out that the heat may stop at a certain point and the very edge may stay frozen. So if you have any questions like that, feel free to look into our snow melting installation manual. We have that exact drawing in the installation manual that shows you how that cable should be laid out, and it shows you how to eliminate those overhangs. Now, we know that some overhang is required by some local building codes, so you'll have to follow your code, but just make sure that you don't go any further than that, because the further you get away from the cable, the less heat's going to get to that.
Great tip. All right. And then the next question was related to can this be used as a primary heat source? And I'm going to tell you, I have floor heating in every room in my home, and I use it as a primary heat source. I'm here in Illinois. We get some very extreme temperatures here, and it has never been a problem for me using this, using any of our products as a primary heat source. However, we do have a heat loss calculator, so we always recommend that people use this tool. It does require a certain amount of information. We'd like to know how tall the walls are. We like to know
values,
our
of everything.
values, windows, fireplaces, the floor level. All of these things are taken into consideration to determine if the product can be used as a primary heat source. At 15 watts, there would be very few applications where this could not be used as a primary heat source. If you lower the watt density, like we were talking about, if you select the cable product and you go down to 8 watts per square foot, you may get into some parts of the winter months in certain areas where you might need additional heat. That's never been a case for me. I actually have in my basement, I have the cable product at 8 watts per square foot. I have it spaced every 4 inches. So that's at 8 watts per square foot. And
Over Cerazorb.
Over Cerazorb, and I think that's the key, over Cerazorb, and I use it as a primary heat source in my basement. So, and it's an above ground basement.
There are certain heat monsters that are going to be a problematic if you live in an older house.
Yes.
If you live in a poorly insulated house, we're talking about a farmhouse with no insulation,
Single plane.
or they,
Yeah, glass.
or they stuff newspapers in the walls, back in the day, because there are a lot of those homes out there.
Yeah.
So things you need to think about that are energy monsters are like skylights.
Mhm.
Those are prime way of losing light or heat. Fireplaces are notorious for if they're not lit up and heating, they're notorious for letting that heat go out.
And I have that in my basement, and it's still a primary heat source, but I don't have skylights.
Multiple outdoor windows, multiple windows facing outdoors,
Yeah.
especially if they're single pane and they're not high efficiency.
True that.
Outside doors, when you open the door, it's a heat loss is just wham, everything's gone.
Right.
And poor insulation. So you just need to take a look at those and do a mental checklist and go, I don't have any outside doors going to this room.
Yeah.
I don't have any skylights. I don't have any exterior walls per se, especially ones with windows. So at that point, you're trying to go through, it sounds like the things that I was told to watch out for, I don't have. I've got a pretty good chance of doing this, or my house was built 2 years ago and I've got R50 in every single part.
Right.
Then you have a really good chance of that. It's just when you're running into older homes with these particular things that we talked about, you would want to definitely use this heat loss calculator. And if you ever are wondering, I wonder if it's going to work or not, or boy, I hope it is, or I expect it to, you're going to have to use this first. Because if we don't, let's say they do this heat loss calculator, and in the worst possible days, 2 or 3 days of the year, it gets down to 20 below or 10 below or whatever it is, we'll actually tell you you're good for 3 seasons plus.
Right.
On the very coldest days, you may need 500 BTUs, or you may need 750 more BTUs on that day.
One particular day.
To make that room warm. Well, then that's easy. You've got a sole source of heat plus a little thing you can bring in that day when it's 20 below.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways to do this, but if you ever have a question or you're thinking about, I wonder if this will work, the heat loss calculator will tell you.
That's the tool. And I think the one thing that we should also mention is that 70% of the time, radiant floor heating is installed in a bathroom, a master bathroom, and that's for the most part on a second level. It's not on a concrete slab for the most part. These are smaller areas, and so by all means, most of those you can use that as a primary heat source. So something to keep in mind. Bathrooms usually very safe. So. And
this is also located just from our homepage there. So it's showing you our homepage, and then you click on Tools, and it's right under that banner there.
Yes, it's also where the operating cost calculator is located.
So if you're wondering how much it's going to cost to operate, or is it going to be sole source of heat, it's going to be located under the Tools tab on the web page.
Cool. We also got a question from Paige about displays. We have displays available for showrooms. We have countertop displays, but she was looking for something that's more portable, just kind of a block, if you will, showing the layers of installation and having that energized. And Paige, we don't have that anymore. We used to have something like that, but as a result of you, I'm inspired again, and I'm going to get something like that. Actually, I've already got something like that in the works, so it is coming, Paige. So
sounds like Paige gets a bonus this year.
Paige gets a bonus.
Nice job, Paige.
I'll be reaching out to you when we're ready with that. And then the final question that we got was, what makes Warmly Yours special? And I love this question. I've been doing this almost 20 years. I'm very passionate about this company. And we do have a lot of firsts in our industry. We were the first to introduce floor heating for carpet. We're absolutely first with our online tools, being able to do the floor plans online, the operating costs, the heat loss calculators. So first in our industry. So we really are radiant heat experts. I know that's the third bullet point, but we're not just a marketing firm or a sales firm. We're radiant heating experts, and we've been doing this a long time. Some of the first